And now, 6 News proudly presents Mid-Michigan Counts.
Hello, I'm Siobhan Klepfer. As Americans, we are blessed with rights that many people around the world don't have. One of them is the right to vote. But with rights comes responsibilities. So we're going to spend the next half hour talking about how you can make your vote count in the next election. And because there are a lot of questions and concerns about the voting process and security, we're also going to talk about all the checks and balances in our elections, both before they begin and after they end. But we are going to start with the one thing you need to do before you're allowed to cast your ballot, and that's registering to vote. Now, in order to register, you need to be a Michigan resident and have lived in your city, town, or township for at least 30 days before you vote. You also have to be a citizen of the United States, at least 18 years old by the time you vote, and you can't be serving a sentence in jail or prison. If you are behind bars but still awaiting trial, you do still have the right to vote. Now in Michigan, you can register right up until Election Day, but if you're doing it within 2 weeks of an election, you're going to have to prove where you live. And that means you're going to need some documents with your name or address. And that can include your Michigan driver's license or state ID, another government document, a paycheck or government check, or a current utility bill or bank statement. So you meet the requirements and you've got everything you need. Where do you go to register? Well, you can do it online, and we've got a link to the state's website at WLNS.com/vote. You can head to any Secretary of State branch office where you get your driver's license and registration. You can check in at any state agency that provides services to people with disabilities. You can also do it by mail, sending in an application as long as it's postmarked at least 15 days before the election. If there are 14 days or less, you have to go in person to your city, county, or township clerk's office. So you're registered and you're ready to vote, but what are you voting on? Well, there's a way to see what's going to be on your ballot before you get it in the mail or go to the polls. Head over to WLNS.com/vote, and we have a link to the state's election website. Then all you have to do is choose your election, plug in your county, select your city or township, and pick your precinct. And then you'll see all of the races, questions, and millages that will appear on your ballot. And that way you'll have time to look into any of the candidates or issues and be fully informed when you go to vote. But did you know that in Michigan, there isn't just one way to vote, there are 3. And Sherry Jones sat down with Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson to talk about each one.
This year, it's important to make sure every voter knows their options to vote and the fact that not only do they have a right to vote absentee or from home in any election, they also now, because of voter enacted changes in 2022, have a right to vote early. That means in the 9 days leading up to Election Day, or what's traditionally known as Election Day, any citizen in the state can go into a local early voting site, get their ballot, vote their ballot, and see it counted just as they would on Election Day itself.
And that is a big change.
Yes, it is. It is, and it's a great change because it means whether you're young or old, students living on campuses or people living all across the state, you can go to a site on the Saturday before the election, 2 Saturdays before an election day, or anytime, a Thursday morning or a Monday evening leading into an election, and actually cast your ballot. Not just fill it out and mail it in or turn it in, but see it counted. And I think that, I hope, will go a long way, not just in providing more options for citizens to vote, but giving people confidence about the process, its integrity, and the results.
Yes, because that's definitely something we're going to talk about during our interview, but making it convenient. And there are several ways that people can cast their ballots. What we talked about, that absentee ballot has made a big difference here in Michigan.
Yeah, you know, in 2020's election, now that was in the midst of a global pandemic, but 2/3, over 63% of voters voted absentee. That meant they got their ballot ahead of time, and you can get your ballot up to a month ahead of time in any election, fill it out at your leisure, and then return it either through the mail or at a local drop box or in person at your clerk's office anytime leading up to the election day itself. So that gives citizens a wide array of opportunities to think about their vote, cast it in an informed way, and also new this year, citizens who do choose to vote from home can track their ballot. So if they mail it back or drop it at a drop box, they can go to michigan.gov/vote and enter their information and get confirmation that their ballot was received and counted.
Yeah, I think that that will definitely give people a lot of peace of mind. And then if you choose to go to the polls on election day, right? And maybe let's talk about if your ID, if you don't you need your ID, if you don't have your voter registration card.
Well, yes. I mean, first we do identify every voter, no matter how they vote, either with a signature or a photo ID. And if you choose to vote in person on election day at your local precinct, you can bring in your ID, a driver's license or state ID, or a student ID this year is also valid. Or if you forget your ID, you can use your signature as your identity. But the vast majority of citizens do have ID and they do bring it in, whatever ID is convenient to them. And our poll workers make sure that their ID matches what's in the voter file and that citizens are identified affirmatively before they get their ballot.
You know, for people that haven't been on election day, the process is very simple. You just pack your patience, walk in, and you really, people are very, very helpful as you navigate that system. And then when you leave, you yourself put your ballot in.
Yeah, that's right. And it's true. Pack your patience in case there are lines. But the good news is this year, because of early voting, you have not just one day, but really 10 days when you could go in person and vote. So we anticipate, especially if you go during the early voting period, the possibility of lines is a lot less. And we hope it's as convenient, as efficient as possible.
And if you've decided to vote absentee and want to make sure that your vote made it through the mail, well, you can do that. Just like you can see your ballot ahead of time, you can also track your ballot. Head over to WLNS.com/vote and we'll link to the state's election website. Now, this page is a little bit different. You need to first put in your first and last name, the month you were born, the year you were born, and your zip code, or you can put in your driver's license number along with your birth month and year. And there you will find a ton of information, including whether you're registered, where your polling place is, absentee ballot and early voting information, including your local drop boxes and your ballot tracker. Now, you might think that an election is basically setting up machines on election day and counting the ballots that night, but there are months of preparation ahead of time and weeks of steps taken afterwards to make sure your elections are safe and secure. We're going to walk you through that process when Mid-Michigan Counts continues.
Catch up with all the latest Mid-Michigan political coverage with Tim Skubic and the Capitol Rundown, Sunday mornings at 5:30 on WLNS.
Well, we have heard from Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. She is, of course, in charge of overseeing elections in Michigan. But where the rubber really hits the road is at the local level, where city, county, and township clerks are really responsible for running things on election day. And Benson paid tribute to them when we sat down with her.
1,500 local clerks in our state, and then 83 county clerks, and then, of course, our statewide Bureau of Elections. So with those layers comes a lot of security layers as well, whether at the local level or statewide level, to make sure that every valid vote counts and only valid votes count. And that's a lot of what our local clerks do in making sure we're identifying voters, that we're ensuring our voter rolls are accurate, and that anyone who wants to vote and is eligible to vote in Michigan is able to do so. And we owe it to every citizen, no matter where they live or who they vote for, to make sure they can have rightly placed faith and confidence in their vote and in our elections.
Now, you might think that running an election is relatively simple. You send out a few ballots by mail, you set up a few machines on election day, and then you count the ballots on election night. But nothing could be further from the truth. Local clerks start preparing for elections months before you go to the polls and work on them for weeks afterwards. In fact, they're often working on the next election while they're still wrapping up the previous one. We asked the Ingham and Jackson County clerks to walk us through the process, and they start by figuring out what's on the ballot as towns, townships, and school districts come up with questions and millages. Then they get the ballots proofed and printed. They have to make sure all drop box sites are not only set up but monitored via video, send out military and absentee ballots ahead of time, and also conduct public tests on the election equipment. And as you've heard, they now have to be ready for early voting as well as on election day. And the work doesn't just end on election night. There's plenty of work for everyone after the polls close. The votes are obviously counted and the unofficial results are posted that night or the next day. A couple of days after the election, a county board of canvassers meets to begin to go over the results. There are also a couple of days for a voter to clear things up if there's a problem with their signature on their absentee ballot, and up to 6 days to count military and overseas ballots that come in, as long as they're postmarked before Election Day. County canvassers actually have a couple of weeks to finish their work and certify an election, and then they handle any recount requests. When that's all said and done, there's still a post-election audit. Ingham County Clerk Barb Byram says people can be confident in the results because there are so many checks and balances along the way.
Oftentimes people think, oh, an election, it's real quick, you just, no, right. It's quite a process. It's a few month-long process with Democrats and Republicans and nonpartisans checking things all along the way. All along the way, the process of election, there is at least one Democrat and one Republican at every single step, whether that's testing ballots, programming, assisting voters, processing absentee ballots, all along the way. And then when the election is over, all of those results are canvassed by 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans again to make sure our elections remain safe and secure.
In a day and age when many people have lost faith in the election process, the clerks say they're totally transparent about how elections work. And not only are they willing to answer questions about what they do, they say they encourage skeptics and everyone else to get involved so you can see how everything happens firsthand.
People are more than welcome to become a precinct worker. You'd be employed by the local clerk, city or township clerk, and you would assist voters, your neighbors, in exercising their right to vote. We always need more people to help with elections. Certainly now that we have early voting, a minimum of 9 days, 8 hours every day of early voting for voters to exercise their right to vote, that increases the need of precinct workers. So if anyone is interested, reach out to your city or township clerk because they are looking for more precinct workers. Reach out to your city or township clerk, and if they're not hiring, Michigan does have a list that people are able to sign up to be an MVP so that the Secretary of State's office can send lists of other individuals who are willing to work elections to local clerks.
I really want to work on turning people from distrusting the elections to supporting the elections. And how I think we do that is educating voters about the security that we provide and also getting them involved. And so part of that process is I invite people to our canvass to watch the canvassers go through each precinct and compare and make sure that that was done properly and accurately.
Still to come, technology is playing a bigger and bigger role in our campaigns and elections. We're going to tell you how it's helping the elections process and talk about the safeguards in place to make sure it's not hurting our democracy. Mid-Michigan Counts. We'll be right back.
I'm Brian. I'm a voter.
I'm Carly. I am a voter.
I'm Randall. I'm a voter.
Are you?
Visit WLNS.com/vote for information on voter registration. Have your voice heard in the upcoming election.
In many ways, technology has made our lives easier. The same is true when it comes to elections. With the internet, information about the candidates and ballot initiatives are at your fingertips. Ballot counting machines are quicker and more reliable than counting by hand. So we asked the Secretary of State for her take on tech.
How has technology changed how you help the average voter?
Well, I always say we need to make sure our elections are accessible and secure, and both of those things together ensure the integrity of our processes. Technology in some ways has made it easier than ever for citizens to get information about voting, to track their ballots, for example, if they vote absentee, and to ensure that we are tabulating every vote efficiently and securely. But it also creates risks, particularly in the arena of misinformation. And we know that there are bad actors out there seeking to deceive and divide all of us as citizens, and we all have to be on guard, from our clerks to everyday citizens, to make sure that misinformation and the misinformation that technology enables to flourish doesn't harm our ability to cast our votes with confidence and with awareness of who we're voting for.
And speaking of the dangers of technology and information, artificial intelligence is new to the scene in this election cycle. And while it has its benefits, it can also create pictures of things that never happened and even create videos of people showing things they've never said or done. There's obviously a lot of potential to abuse AI, particularly when people are in pursuit of power. Nate Zalzar takes a closer look at the problem and what's being done to fight it here in Michigan.
As human beings, we can easily be fooled by AI-produced content.
Professor Anjana Sasarla studies the responsible use of AI technology at Michigan State University. She says it's gotten to the point that sometimes even experts can't tell the difference.
We don't really have mechanisms that we have all adopted that says this piece of content is AI produced.
Images of Donald Trump hugging Fauci that were clearly fabricated. So our bill package requires that you put a disclaimer on any content like a video, an audio recording, or an image that is substantially or fully generated by artificial intelligence.
It could mean up to 93 days in jail for anyone who produces that kind of content, or be fined up to $1,000. Representative Cernoglu says it's especially important now as we head into a major election season.
Anyone can access the ability to create a deep fake of someone's voice or likeness.
Even for someone like me on my cell phone.
I will be voting for Joe Biden, no questions asked.
I have decided that Donald Trump will undoubtedly have my vote come the next presidential election.
Well, it's a bit rough around the edges, but this took me a minute to generate using an online AI software. In the hands of feuding politicians with unlimited time and money, it can cause a lot of confusion.
This is one of the things that we can do really to protect the integrity of our elections.
A certificate of credibility is a good thing.
Of course, laws won't stop bad actors from abusing technology to try and win a few extra votes, and that's why Secretary Benson says it's important for people to pay attention and use both common sense and critical thinking about the information that's out there and who they want to vote for.
It's really important that we all become critical consumers of information in this moment, that we recognize that there are forces out there trying not to just divide us, but deceive us. And we can respond to that by looking to trusted sources of information, like our local election clerks, by reporting misinformation if we find it. There's an organization website called disinfo.org. And that's an opportunity for citizens to enter their misinformation and either report it or have it validated. There are a lot of fact-checking websites out there, both at michigan.gov/vote and at PolitiFact and other websites that help us identify and source misinformation. But the advent of artificial intelligence is going to make it easier than ever for bad actors to try to deceive us. So we've all got to band together to make sure we are fully aware of the truth about our election policies and procedures, and in that way able to resist both the spread of that misinformation and stop it from infecting the minds of our citizens. This year, particularly with artificial intelligence, we've passed laws in the state so that any fake information about candidates using artificial intelligence will be disclosed on the ad itself, and it's illegal to actually use AI in Michigan to manipulate voter information or candidates' voices. So we'll be on guard on that as well. But in addition to that, voters can go to michigan.gov/vote to find out trusted information about their elections, and actually on that website enter in misinformation they may be hearing to get the truth and the facts in response to the myths that will be part of, unfortunately, the election discourse this year.
When we come back, with faith in our elections floundering, we asked our elections officials what they wanted to say about the process and in defense of democracy. We'll share their thoughts with you when Mid-Michigan Counts returns.
I'm Julie. I vote for my family.
I'm Todd. I vote for my community.
I'm Brian. I vote for our future.
Visit WLNS.com/vote for information on voter registration. Have your voice heard in the upcoming election.
While there's no indication that our elections have been compromised, there's little doubt that the confidence in our elections has been shaken. So before we go tonight, we wanted to give our two local clerks and the Secretary of State the last word about why they have faith in our system and why you should too.
Get involved and get educated. If you have questions, contact your local clerk's office, your county clerk's office. We're happy to provide any education, any resource that we can provide to you.
I know that clerks around the state of Michigan stand ready to explain how we know our elections are some of the most safe and secure elections in the nation, and bring people in to see how the different levels of government are checking each other's work. I mentioned the local clerks are checking my work in programming. Well, after the election, the Board of Canvassers, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, will check the local clerks' work. There's always checks and balances. There are many times along the process that things are being checked, but unfortunately, people are believing a lot of those election conspiracy claims.
You know, I want every citizen in the state to know the power of their voice and the importance of their vote. Certainly, it can't be lost on any of us that the Michigan electorate will decide the national election in many ways, and we have an influential role to play in the presidential election. That's why we're seeing so many candidates come to Michigan and pay attention to our voters in our state. But with that influence comes a great responsibility to ensure that we're voting, that we're spreading truthful information about voting, and that we're seeking to define in this election who we're going to be in years to come, and casting our votes in accordance of who we are and who we want to be as citizens.
We want to remind you how important it is that you take advantage of your right to vote. Remember, it's a right that many people across the globe don't have and wish they had. Thanks again for watching, and make your vote count.